Welcome to Black Opal, the book and video, a comprehensive guide to cutting and orientating. Australia. When thinking of Australia, these are the symbols that are renowned to the world. Lightning Ridge is situated approximately 820 kilometres north by northwest from Sydney. Another day dawns upon the Lightning Ridge opal fields. These are the fields that produce black opal. Since the late 1800s, men and women have struggled and toiled to seek this elusive gem. Life today is still harsh upon these fields. Excepting for machinery, things have stayed pretty much the same. Life is tough. The work is arduous. And the rewards sometimes can be great. Unique to Lightning Ridge are the camps that surround the township. At least 50% of the population choose to live on the opal fields. The choice of accommodation is as diverse and as individual as the people who build and choose to live in them. Most camps are powered by diesel or petrol generators, and to many people in Lightning Ridge, life is pretty much normal living this way. Houses within the township of Lightning Ridge are as modern as that of any other city. To mine for opal at Lightning Ridge, first a claim must be surveyed, pegged and then registered, and a shaft must be sunk. Even as late as the 1960s, most holes were dug by hand, and the claim worked with a pick and shovel, leaving very little chance of prospecting the ground first. Today, remnants of days gone by still exist side by side with modern machinery. With the advent of 9-inch prospecting drills, prospecting for opal has been completely revolutionised. Most of the 9-inch prospecting drills in Lightning Ridge have been purpose-built by local tradespersons. Necessity is definitely the mother of invention. Setting up the drill takes a matter of minutes. These drills tower above the opal fields on a daily basis. Several prospecting holes of varying depths of up to 100 feet can be sunk within a single working day. Not every hole will yield opal. Black opal still remains the most elusive gem of them all. The search for black opal is a never-ending one. Once a miner has pegged his claim, he will then need to sink a shaft in order to work it. Towering almost 4 stories above the Australian bush, this drill, known as a core well drill, can sink shafts of up to 100 feet. The core well drill employs a unique method of drilling. By spinning this bucket, it captures the dirt as it rotates. It usually takes a 2-man team to operate this type of drill. Holes made by the core well are usually 3 foot in diameter and usually sunk to depths of around 40 to 60 feet. This allows the miner to climb down his mine to the opal level and work his claim. Once the bucket is full, it is raised, swung out of the way, and emptied by pulling the rope. This is repeated time and time again until the job is done. Several tungsten teeth are needed to maximise the efficiency of this drill. The dirt emerging from the hole is carted away. Not too far though, the miner will have to backfill his hole when he has finished working his claim. The sound of an electric hammer digging into opal dirt. To some opal miners, this sound is pure heaven. To others, it is the sound of hope in that the next foot may yield a screaming black opal gem. This work is definitely not for the faint-hearted. There are a few ways to mine for opal at Lightning Ridge. Using air or electric hammers, along with shoveling dirt by hand into an upright wheelbarrow known as a rickshaw, is the most common method. Most of the opal at Lightning Ridge forms in what is known as knobbies. The idea here is not so much to find opal in the wall, but to extract the dirt so as it can be washed. Up goes another hopeful load of opal-bearing dirt. This machine is known as a hoist, winch or self-tipper. Along with air or electric hammers, and shoveling dirt by hand is the most economical way to mine for opal. Devised on the opal field, the winch can be run by a small generator. The bucket is pulled up by a cable and then unassisted tips its load out into an awaiting truck. And then the bucket returns. Back down the hole, where the opal miners are waiting to send up another load. Another way to mine for opal at Lightning Ridge is with the use of a super hoist. This is used in conjunction with other equipment. As the miner prepares to resume work after a short break, he is confident in the knowledge that his partner downstairs is working feverishly. In this opal mine, the miners will work the claim at about twice the speed as conventional opal mining. Looking like something out of a movie, this machine is called a digger. It operates with the assistance of a large generator which is situated on ground level. Although quite a large machine, moving the digger from one place to another in the mine requires little assistance. The digger virtually drags itself into position. To begin work, the miner will carefully position the digger to resume excavating, simply by using the levers. To steady the digger, a ram is forced up against the ceiling of the mine. Both miner and digger are now ready to work. Although the initial capital outlay for this equipment is a lot larger than conventional opal mining, this method sure beats any kind of hand mining. This little wonder is known as a bogger. Looking a bit like something from a space movie, it makes shoveling dirt by hand quite unnecessary. An excellent labour-saving device, it would virtually take 2 men twice as long to shovel the same amount of dirt. Operating via remote control, the miner needs only to press a few buttons to make it work. In a matter of minutes, he has a full load of opal-bearing dirt ready to send up to the truck. The super hoist gets its name because of the large capacity of the bucket, which holds up to 3 times the amount of dirt in comparison to a normal hoist. In Lightning Ridge, opal mining simply means moving a lot of dirt. As the bucket makes its way to the surface, the miner will reposition the digger and resume digging. In this entire bucket of opal-bearing dirt, there may or may not be opal. Only when the dirt is processed will the miner actually know. The miner will send up bucket after bucket until the truck is full. In fact, it may actually take several truckloads of dirt to yield one single solitary black opal. Another method of extracting the dirt is with the use of what is known as a blower. The blower, mounted on the back of a truck, works like a huge vacuum cleaner, sucking dirt from the mine through a series of pipes. Open-cut mining is very rarely carried out at Lightning Ridge. A truckload of opal-bearing dirt on its way to be processed. Soon the miners will know if their hard work has paid off. Nestled amongst the Australian bush, this is where the opal dirt ends up at the end of each opal miner's day. The dam will provide the necessary water via a water pump in order to wear the opal dirt down. Known as aggies or agitators, these agitators were once cement mixers that found their way onto the Lightning Ridge opal fields. Again here, necessity is the mother of invention. Through a cleverly designed chute, the opal miners will empty the entire truckload of opal-bearing dirt onto this conveyor belt. The agitator has the capacity to process an enormous amount of dirt. Water from the dam is constantly pumped into the agitator. Most opal miners will process at least 1 or 2 truckloads of opal dirt per day. This is rare footage of opal dirt actually being processed inside the agitator. At least 80% of all opal at Lightning Ridge is found this way. A series of small mesh windows allow the worn down dirt to escape from the aggie, hopefully leaving behind black opal knobbies. At the end of the day, the agitator is geared into reverse to empty the tailings out onto the sorting tray. This is known as tailing out. If there's any opal to be found at all, then it's off to the opal cutter.
A high-quality gem cutting shop specifically laid out to cut opal. Now, when setting up, bench height is very important. This height is correct for my height. Can work quite comfortably while standing, or equally so while sitting, which is what we do more of. This is our twin-headed 8-inch grinder, the 180 grit rub-down wheel and a 360 diamond lap on this side. And on the other side we have a 360 final cutting wheel. Our sander is an 8-inch by 3-inch centrifugal drum. As the wheel spins, it expands, locking the belt to the face of it. Our pumice wheel is an 8 by 1/2-inch felt pad on a single-headed machine, as is our polishing buff, only this one is impregnated with cerium oxide, lapsa, and a small amount of 30,000 diamond mesh. Our trim saw is a 6-inch by 6 thou diamond blade, a very useful tool if used correctly. Now we'll adjust the lights, must have adequate lighting, start the machine, adjust the water flow. Now let's have a look at a piece of opal. Fairly rough looking knobby, fairly mixed up looking. We can see here though where it's been chipped. It's a nice bit of gem colour poking through there. Still a very mixed up piece. See a little bit of colour just here, poking through the skin. See colour bars on where it's been snipped. Very, very mixed up knobby. Just pointing those bars out. Used to run across this way. This is what we assume from the outside. You see it here is a little bit of a blue haze, a couple of big holes there. So this area here will probably be the usable area. We'll look at that closely now. Here's the bar poking through the potch skin. Shows as a blue round here. Couple of huge holes in the back of the piece here. This area should be usable. See how the bar comes down through there, joins up where it has been snipped. We assume it runs that direction. There's your colour bar proper looking down from the top of the stone, or what will be the top. Here's your matrix cap. You have a fair amount of black on the back. There's our bar there. Have quite a large divot here in the matrix cap, and a nasty looking sand hole just over here. So we assume now, because of these holes in the back, that this area here will be usable. We won't know until we rub around the piece, of course. We may have to cut through here, taking this side off. I don't know until we get into the piece. But this area here looks very solid backed. Just pointing out the bars here, we have 3 bars. The bottom one, which will be the top bar, is the gem bar. This area here has to be rubbed down from this point here right through to here. We're looking for continuity of colour. We're trying to find out whether the bar is straight or not. And we rub gently, there's no rush. There's our colour bar. You can see here that it sort of lines up with where the piece has been chipped. So we'll clean out this area here now, hopefully giving us a better look inside the piece. Nice and gently. It's millions of years old and it only takes seconds to completely ruin it. There's our bars. You can see here, just point this out. There's our black bar on the bottom. We have our blue in the middle and our gem green-orange bar across the top. That'll be the bar we'll go for. We'll rub this corner off now to see how far the colour does go into the piece. Or in fact, if it goes right around the piece. Just rubbing gently. Just cleaning off that little bit of skin and sand that's on the edge of this knobby. See our colour bar there, it's starting to look straight. That's it, looking down on it. What looked fairly rough is starting to show a bit of promise. Now we'll clean that around the edges a bit further. Even if you're fairly certain where the colour runs, it always pays to go around the knobby and make certain before you face the piece off. There's a kernel starting to pop in there. I'll explain that shortly. Fairly straight barred. Just rubbing it a bit further to clean off this side where the kernel is. And there's our kernel there. Stop the opal in its tracks. Around here it's fairly clean as we saw before. There's our kernel now, just pointing it out. Stops the opal bar from flowing through. We'll clean the other side of that now to see how big a problem this is going to be. Just taking the skin off to expose the colour bar. Just gently, there's no rush with it. There's our colour bar. We can see the kernel either end of that colour has just stopped the opal in its tracks both sides. And where that is going to run through the piece, we don't actually know at this point, but it will create problems. It's the back of the piece. Fairly straight bar. Very nice colour. Just clean it off further. A little bit at a time. You can see here now that the kernel has dived straight down through the colour bar, completely breaking it. Down through here, probably coming from this divot here in the matrix cap. Stop the opal again. We'll clean that a little bit further on the other side. We're not going to face the piece down until we're absolutely certain that we have continuity and we have sorted out the problems. Just looking at the piece there where the kernel is, we'll give that a bit more of a rub to get that skin off so the colour bar is sharper. Now you can see here there's our kernel straight through, completely through the knobby. And this colour bar here looks as though it rolls down into the piece, which in fact it probably does. Now where this kernel goes to, see the other point here, we're not absolutely certain at this time. It may go straight across the piece, or it may pool out in the centre. It goes possibly from this, well, from this point here, we're not sure where it'll run. Possibly putting us on a plot, looking at it on the side here, from this area here, across this way, to here, giving us a usable area here, hopefully. But it is in fairly deep straight through the colour bar. Now what it does inside we don't know yet. This area here should be usable. We're just looking down on the colour now as it's facing on the black from what will be the top. You can see it's quite bright. The green bar, green-orange bar is very bright here. And here, that's how the stone will face. We'll just clean it a bit further around the edges. It's a nice straight colour bar, but the kernel is going to cause a major problem. Just tidying it up. Fair amount of backing on this piece too. This side here we're just cleaning off a bit further because the green-orange bar is very thin, and as we come in the bar will thicken up. As we're lifting the cap off by coming in, you can see the gem bar there, it's very thin across the top. Rub it a bit further. We've got to be able to see our way clear to have it as usable opal. Okay, we can see the colour bar there. Just pointing it out, there's our little thin bar there. It's very thin under the cap, but it is very straight. Nice piece. Now here's our thickest point of the cap, and here we're very, very thin, hardly any cap at all. So now to bring this down, we'll bring it down evenly, working from the heaviest point, as we do with most rubbing down. Always take the overburden or the highest points off first. Set up a sense of balance in the piece as we go around, bringing it down evenly and slowly. Plenty of sand in this piece. But we still have enough cap on this to possibly get rid of the majority of this sand. Won't know till we get down further. Lots of problems there. Just rubbing gently. I'm using a rolling motion. We don't want to flatten the piece off. Bringing it down evenly all the way around. See sand problems in here, and through this area, and here even under the skin. We still may get rid of a lot of that as we go down. As I said before, work it evenly around the piece, taking it down equally. Getting a sense of balance here, just slightly doming it. A major problem here. Sand's blown out, leaving a hole right in where that kernel is. That'll be unusable in that area. That would be right through the colour. Quite often matrix will carry sand down like this. You can see we still have a lot of problem, but we'll still bring the cap down further. You can see the colour just underneath the skin, it's starting to show. Rubbing gently and evenly. As I say, slightly doming it. It's a fairly thin bar and it will be a shallow cabochon or cabochons depending on how many stones we cut. You see the kernel running through here, right through the centre of the stone. From this point here, straight across to this point here. So that entire centre area is now unusable. I'll continue cleaning this down to get the rest of the skin off. It's actually a white potch skin now, we've long since gone through the matrix. Just bringing it down gently and evenly. Starting to show a bit of colour now. And of course our problems are very evident. The sand here is very heavy. Kernel, well that's the white potch area. Sand holes here and here. Quite a few problems. We'll take it down further, clean the remnants of that skin off, facing the opal proper. A little bit at a time. You see a bit of a haze over this area here. We'll take that off and bring the colour right out bright and sharp. That area is wrecked, it will be 2 stones. Plus we'll probably cut little pointers, which are fractions of a carat rather than waste opal. So here now that we've taken the skin fairly well off, a very bright piece. There's a little bit more to go here. There we are. Very bright piece of opal. If it didn't have that flaw through the centre, it'd be quite a large stone. Nice green, orange, black opal. Even a little bit of red orange in the left-hand side there. Now you can see that, as I said before, this is where the kernel's gone right through and destroyed it. It's very, very clear where it runs in through here. And that will be straight through the opal all the way through the centre because of the sand holes. See the edge of it there. Plenty of sand here. This area here we may be able to get some of this out during the doming process. Coming in from that way. So as we can see, the colour bar is quite thick. So when we're actually forming our little cabochon rolling over, we might be able to get rid of a lot of that sand. To map it out, we'll have to cut it through anywhere through this kernel. Just mapping out a point here with a pencil for our saw cut. Anywhere through there is fine. And we'll also take this corner off, saving the little stone rather than grinding it away. A nice little stone in there. That'll give us a look into this area then when we've sliced this in half. As we grind in, we'll be able to see how deep that sand actually penetrates the opal in this area. I'm just mixing up some lubricant here for the saw using crystallite, a couple of tablespoons of crystallite in a jar of water. We just stir that up thoroughly. I sort of add this to the saw with the machine running. As it foams around the top guard, then we know that the tank's full. There we are. It's quite a good lubricant, crystallite. And we line the piece up and make our saw cut. As I say, the pencil line is a guide. I generally slice most of my pieces by eye, but anywhere through that kernel will do no damage to the opal. So you can see when we come through here, plenty of sand straight through the whole piece. Two nice pieces of opal, still have problems and still have to be orientated. Very pretty. The purpose of this exercise here now is to show you what size we would get out of a piece of opal if we were to standard size or calibrate it. This piece here has a sand spot in the centre, which I'll just point out here, which will come out during the doming process. Now bear in mind here, we do not calibrate black opal, but this does give you an indication of what size you could get out of the piece. Should point out also we are standard sizing these pieces, or commercialising them I should say, at the customer's request, the owner's request. Looking at this piece here, as we previously marked out, we'll take this top corner off, getting that little stone in there. We'll also slice this bottom corner off, even though it's not usable, but it'll give us a look inside the piece. We would grind it away in any case. Using the same size template to give us an idea, we can see down in this area, down here, sand is very thick. We would not get that size out of it. Now we're mapping the piece out properly. We'll make a saw cut through there, giving us our stone in this area here. It would make a nice free format, as I said. It's being commercialised at the owner's request. We get a little stone in here, a nice little triangle stone up here. Just wetting the piece there, we line it up with the saw. Never push hard against the saw, let the blade do the work. It will cut quite fast in any case. So here too, with the little piece we're taking off here, I always lean towards leaving the main stone a little bit bigger, rather than having the pointer a bit bigger. Alright, there's our offcut. You can see how the sand has gone down in an arc here underneath, which will aid in the doming at the back of the piece. It's a sort of freak of nature that's worked in our favour for a change. Same applies to this little piece. We'll cut him at a later date. Be a little round cornered triangle. Beautiful pattern piece though. Nice broad pattern. We're slicing the other piece off now, taking the corner off. We'll have a look at the sand. When we take this little pointer off, we'll have a better look inside the piece to see if the sand does go underneath the actual colour or not. There we go. No, the sand doesn't go under the colour. It's basically where we can see it. So we'll take the little corner off here just to get rid of it. Give us a look. As I say, it's not usable. Alright, now we're starting to get somewhere with this piece. There is our offcuts and the main stone there. Same with this piece here. I'll point out here that this corner can't be sliced off with the saw because the saw would take most of the opal during the cut. So we'll grind it off, unfortunately, as we will with this top corner here. And then just nipping pieces all the way around to get our oval. There's our knobby. Looking at the sand here now, we're going to orientate this piece properly. That sand's very deep. Also very deep in here. Right through the colour. This little bit of sand won't be a problem. It'll fit in with our shaping. And when we're mapping out the stone, always map it out bigger than you expect to get. Rather bigger than smaller. You can always take opal away, but you can't put it back. A nice stone in there. That sand might come out. Just grinding gently until we get the sand to show halfway up the colour bar or above the colour bar, making it possible to roll it out during the doming. Still a bit of sand there. Fairly clean now. This area here is quite a large problem. We will have to take the right hand side of this stone off with the saw, I think, rather than grind this right hand corner away there. Plenty of sand there, plenty of it. Completely through the opal. I have to come in a fair way before that is clear enough to be usable. Unfortunately, sand and matrix does this to us all the time with opal. See, the sand is above the colour bar there. That'll roll out. Just cleaning it around the edge. Trying to ascertain now what opal is actually usable and where we'll have to cut opal away. Now we've taken that corner off. We'll map out the final stone. You see that this area here is, on the right hand side here, is totally unusable. It'll all have to be ground away, as with this corner and these little points. Should be quite a nice stone. Now we'll shape this up, adjust your water flow. I'm starting on the problem area. We'll start to bring this into shape. Plenty of sand there. While we're doing this, we're working a shape that you have in mind and always sticking to that as you go. You don't just grind in to get rid of the sand, you work it out within the shape. Just keep bringing it in a little bit at a time until the sand is above the colour bar or up near the top of the colour bar, so you can see your way clear, as I said before, to roll it out during the doming. Just bringing it in slowly, evenly and gently. We have to try and get rid of that sand to the best of our ability in the side, bring it up higher. You see it's lifting up now as we come in, but we also don't want to make the stone too small, so we'll only come as far as we need to, giving us the availability of being able to cut that out during the doming again, as I'd said earlier. Now, bearing in mind your shape all the time, we'll work around the stone. Yeah, the sand is coming up fairly high onto the colour there. Just a tiny bit more maybe. This side here we have a remnant of the kernel. It shows as a grey-white ring around the stone, so to speak, on this side. That has to go, it's not usable. It detracts from the value of the stone. Just bringing it into shape, a little bit at a time. I'm never too fussy about perfect shapes during pre-forming. I certainly am when we're final cutting though. Just nipping it into shape. You see the back here, we're very thick on this side. Very thin or virtually no back at all on this side. Bit of a hole in there. So we'll start from the high point here, bringing this back up into a setting edge. Working at approximately the angle you want to finish the back at. Just grinding it up, bringing the edge up. See our angle there. Still a long way to go with the back of this stone, of course. Just bringing the edge up now. As we come around to where the sand is or where the hole is, we'll stop either side of that. We'll sort of jump over it. There's nothing there to cut in any case. Again here, taking the high points, taking the top off, that ridge on the back. This stone unfortunately will have that sand hole in the back when it's finished. We'd have to make the stone greatly smaller to get rid of that. As long as it doesn't show from the face, we should be okay. Bringing the back up in a slight doming motion. Taking the shoulders off. And rolling it. Trying to maintain a sense of balance here. Bring the setting edge up a little further now. Jump over the sand. Now we'll just take the sharp corner off the shoulder that's been left there by the previous cuts. So the colour bar is quite thick. We should get a nice shallow dome on this stone. Working from the very edge of the colour bar, where the sandy area is, in towards the centre, slightly rolling it, doming it as we go. I'm not going to try and achieve a full cabochon on this piece. We'll do that when we final cut it. But we will give it a slight dome here, working from the corners, the shoulders, right into the centre of the piece. Gently, don't want to cut away too much opal unnecessarily. Seeing that little domed effect, quite a nice piece. Just trimming it up a little bit here and there. It doesn't matter how long it takes to do this, as long as you don't waste too much opal doing it. There's our little preform. Very nice little stone. Nice pattern piece. As I said, that hole in the back there will remain. Our colour bar where it's square will be rounded off during the other processes from here on out. Now let's have a look at the other piece. Now we can see here the way we've sliced this up in orientation. We only have to take this corner off here where the remnants of the kernel are, and this bit of sand here we're hoping doesn't meet up with this sand on the side. You can see here that the sand is quite deep into the piece. Yes, our oval will be in this region here. So we should be able to get rid of most of that sand on that corner we just marked as we bring it into shape. Little bits here and there to bring it into oval. Just giving you an idea of the map out. There's our stone. We'll adjust the water flow again. Of course we'll start on the problem area of the piece. Grind it away first. And as I've said before, bear in mind the final shape that you wish to end up with while you're doing this. The sand there has gone up as we've come in. We're just hoping this side here is not too deep. It's below the colour, but it needs to be further below the colour or it'll be in the back fairly well, which we don't want if we can avoid it. We also don't want to make the stone too small. Now it's below the colour bar there. You can check with sand spots like in the face of this by holding it up to a light and a bright light at an oblique angle, and you should be able to see if the sand penetrates or how deeply it penetrates. Just bring it into shape a little bit at a time. As I said, it doesn't matter how long it takes to shape a stone as long as you don't waste too much of the opal. A little bit at a time. Turning into a nice little stone here. So there's our colour bar. Not real thick and a fairly dirty back, but it may clean up fairly well. Just trim it a little bit better into shape here. Now we'll bring the opal down as we did before, just working from the edge to the centre, gently rocking it. We're taking the last remnants of the skin off at this point. Just gently rocking it. It'll be a very shallow dome, but still a dome nonetheless. Gently rocking it. Nice piece of opal. Again here we start with a high point on the back, working at the angle that we want the back to finish at. Take away the highest points, and as you get to sand areas like this, you jump over it. There's nothing really there to cut. We basically bring the stone, the edge of the stone up, bit by bit, until we have a fair amount of balance in it. We'll take all these high points off the back about now, I'd say. Get a balance into that back. As we did before, just rolling it in, slightly doming the back. This back will surprisingly clean up fairly well, I'd say. A bit of blue colour there, it's not commercial. We'll have a fairly black back stone here. Just doming the back slightly. As I say, this is only a preform stage, so we don't have to be perfect. Taking it back down a bit, getting a balance into it. We just trim that little setting edge up a bit further, up the stone now. Take the shoulder off created by that series of cuts. Roll it in. See, the stone's cleaning up fairly well on the back. It's not an absolutely thick colour bar, but thick enough. We've left it fairly square here, but we'll get our cabochon orientated properly during the final cutting, sanding and pumicing stages. Lovely broad pattern green, orange, black stone. Here's our two rubs. This will be ready to be dopped up shortly. Just giving you a look at the overall picture here. Big sand hole in the left stone there, that will remain in the back. Just rough preforms at this stage. See, we've left the opal fairly square, we will dome that over. Very pretty stones. Black backed. Green, orange, black opal. And we're going to make a dop stick here. Using a piece of 1/4 inch dowel, I use the 180 grit wheel, the coarse rubbing down wheel. We'll just flatten the end of the stick off and chamfer the edge. That's our standard dop stick. Now for smaller stones, what I do here is I taper the stick, sort of hollow grinding it. Now you can do this anywhere you like down the stick. You can make that longer or steeper the angle, depending on how much clearance you want. And you can make it as small as you like, depending on the stones you want to dop up. You must make sure that little pad on the top there is concentric to the rest of the stick. Otherwise, when you're spinning the stone, you'll have problems. So this way I can dop very, very small stones and still use the same size dop stick that my hands are used to. As I say, you can go as small as you like here, or as small as you need to. There we are. That's our tapered dop stick. Now our next operation here is we're using our methylated spirit burner. We apply some dopping wax to the stick, heating it up fairly well. Make sure you have enough wax on the stick to cover the entire stick when we roll it up. We heat that, moisten our fingers so the wax doesn't stick to them, and we'll roll it up. Roll it up, little pad of wax on the top there. There's our stick, waxed and ready to go. And we'll take a stick here that's already been waxed, heating that, rolling the wax up as we just did previously. We take our stone, warm the back of it till the moisture evaporates from the face, and you will see that while you're doing it. Heat the wax fairly well. Place it as centrally as possible on the back of the stone. We'll pick that back up, reheat it between the opal and the wax, moisten fingers again and roll the wax up into the back. What we're doing here is the stone has to be set at 90 degrees to the stick and as central as possible in all directions. We're using the colour bar here as a guide. There we are. See our stone dopped? There's both of them now, ready to be final cut. They're going to be very nice stones. We're just showing you the spinning action here, using the thumb and first 3 fingers of the right hand to do the spinning, and the thumb and forefinger of the left hand as a chuck. We can get total control over the spinning motion, and we need to do that to get a good finish. And we'll final shape this stone, again adjusting your water flow. We'll just trim this bit by bit until we have it into shape, working at an angle to the wheel, which creates a little setting edge on the uppermost or the opal side of the stone, the face. We must maintain that angle all the way through this shaping process. Nearly all opal is shaped by eye. You can use a template as a guide if you wish. Most cutters prefer to just do it this way. Just a little bit at a time. As I say, no rush shaping it up, just as long as we're not wasting too much opal doing it. A little bit here and there. I'm looking down on the stone there as we're working, so it's quite easy to see the shape. And we're bringing the opal into its shallow dome now, starting right on the very shoulder itself and working around to the centre. So we're cross-hatching the centre there to get rid of any high points before we spin it. It's a very thin bar, we have to work gently here. And we spin from the outside edge right into the centre. We cross-hatch again to get rid of the spiralling created by the previous set of cuts. Just trimming a little bit here and there to bring it into shape. Now if we do cut little bits here and there like that, we have to go back to the spinning process and put everything back into symmetry. Again, cross-hatching to get rid of the spiralling. Just a little trim here and there. Final cut has to be the final cut. It has to be a good shape. There's our stone. Finally shaped. This stone here has problems on this side. Because of this hole in the back here, we will have to come in a little bit on the side of this stone as we're shaping the oval, so that the hole ends up below the setting edge at the back. Now I'm starting here on the solid side of the stone and working round to where the hollow is. We still have to cut gently here because it will cut away quickly where it's thinner. And maintaining your shape all the while. Yes, slowly. I'm cutting very intensely here on this side because that's got to come in, but it's also got to be in shape. We do need that sand hole as far down the setting edge as possible. Just bringing the opal into a dome, again working the shoulder. Sharp shoulder left from the last series of cuts. Rolling and cross-hatching here, just to get rid of the high points before we start our spinning. As I've said, we start from the edge, and we spin it all the way up and over into the centre of the stone. That's it. Cross-hatching again to get rid of spiralling. It'll be a shallow dome, but a pretty one. Stone is slightly out of shape, a little trim on the ends. As I say, if you do trim the ends like this, you have to go back and bring the whole thing into symmetry. See here, I'm working the longer ends more than I would the shorter because they cut less when you're spinning. Nice little stone. Now we're going to sand them. Adjust your water flow on the sander. Using a 600 grit belt here, starting at the angle that the stone was cut at, doing the setting edge first. We'll show you that. It's a fairly sharp wheel, this one, it's fairly new. And we'll just have a close look. We have a satin finish on the end here. That's the desired effect. Looking up the side of the stone here, on the setting edge itself, these vertical lines have to be gotten rid of, the remnants of the wheel marks from the previous operation. Again, working at the same angle. Work the long sides more than you would the shorter. We're only doing the absolute edge at the moment. Let's just spin that top off, that top corner. Here we are, there's our finish on there now. No wheel marks left. That's the desired finish we want to achieve over the entire opal in this stage. We're taking the opal shoulder off here, the actual opal itself, working the long sides, getting in preparation to spinning it up, as we did when we were shaping it. Spinning here, up to the centre, from the edge to the centre. Trying to get a nice evenness in this shallow dome. Cross-hatching here to get rid of any spiralling. Spinning it from the edge to the centre. Cross-hatching again. We'll show you here in slow motion, working the long sides first, up and down, backwards and forwards, and the cross-hatching is actually a circular motion working across the face of the dome, but we're working across the long axis. It's just to get rid of the spiralling and evenness has to be created. Let's have a look at the face of this stone now. We look at this area here in the centre, we still have remnants of wheel marks, grinding marks. They have to be gotten rid of. And the centre of a stone is usually the hardest area to finish. So we go back to the sander and we cross hatch that centre, all the while spinning from the edges into the centre, working the long edges more than the short. Just taking the high points off here, spinning it back up to the centre. From the very edge to the centre. The spinning action is quite fast here. Cross-hatching the top. And there's our finish. Now as the light runs around this stone, you can see it's still bumpy, it's still faceted, but it has a nice matte finish. That's what we have to achieve on both these stones. With this other stone now we do exactly the same, start from the very edge. Work our way up over the opal shoulder, the square edge that we've left there, bringing it into a shallow cabochon, spinning and cross-hatching. Right from the edge to the centre. It's a fairly shallow dome, but you can see here the effect is quite nice. That's only a satin finish. We're nearly ready now to pumice. What we'll do here is we'll wash our hands and the stones and your sticks before this operation. Make sure this wheel is very wet or it will drag and burn the stones. Apply a liberal amount of pumice powder. I'm using coarse and medium here. The formula for this is in the text. Now starting on the edge again, we do exactly as we did on the sander. Repeat the operation from the edge up over the shoulder to the centre of the stone. And we're spinning and oscillating, making sure that we pumice every single spot on that stone. Let's get a nice even finish in this operation because polishing doesn't cut very much. And you won't be able to get rid of a lot of marks during the polishing stages. Plenty of water and pumice, as I said. Water and pumice is cheap, opal isn't. Working from the very edge of the stone, up over the shoulder, spinning it rapidly. Work the long edges a bit more there, you see. I just wipe it on my arm, have a look at the stone. I can see here as the light runs around this, we now have a semi-polish. This is our pre-polish stage. You can see no rippling or wheel marks in this stone. It's quite a nice finish. Do the same with the other stone. Again, working its setting edge first, up over the shoulder to the face of the stone, spinning and oscillating at the same time, and maintaining a wet wheel. Felt does drag very much. If you let it go, if you let it dry, it'll drag badly. It'll burn stones very, very quickly. Just spinning it up here. There's our stone pumiced. You can see as the light runs around the stone, that's our indicator, and it shows us no rippling, no wheel marks, just a nice semi-gloss finish. Now with the polishing here, make sure the wheel is very wet. It also will drag, being a felt buff. And again, start on the edge of the stone and work your way up to the centre of the dome. Spinning and oscillating. You see I support my right hand with a couple of fingers of my left hand here. You can do whatever makes life easier for you or more comfortable. Working the entire surface area of this stone and make sure that the wheel is wet. Don't let it dry out. You can see polishing powder here going up over the stone onto the stick, so the wheel isn't very dry at this point. Well, no, it isn't too dry. And there's our polished finish. As the light runs around again, you can see we have a nice, even, high gloss polish. So that's the desired effect. This is what we're after. A beautiful stone. We do the same with the other stone. Working from the edge of the stone, the setting edge all the way up over the shoulder into the centre. spinning and oscillating, making sure we cover the entire surface area of the stone during the polishing. Spinning it rather fast gives you a more even finish the faster you spin. Working a lot on the centre of this stone here because it is slightly fatter in shape. There's our finish on that stone. As the light runs around, we can see a good finish here, no rippling, no wheel marks. It's a nicely polished stone. And of course we wash our stones and the sticks as we have done between sanding, pumicing and now this operation. Using a clean towel, because we don't want to scratch the stones with grit from previous operations. We dry the stones off. And using our spirit lamp again, we'll take them off here by heating between the opal and the wax. Now I'm using a blunt silver knife here. It doesn't scratch opal. Do the same with the other stone in a minute. We'll just warm this up now. Roll the wax back up. Heat it and place it as centrally as possible on the face of the stone, as we did before. Picking this up, we'll heat between the opal and the wax. Roll it back into the face of the opal. And get it as central as you can and at 90 degrees to the stick. Of course, again here we're using the colour bar as our guide. As you can see here, nice and central, 90 degrees to the stick. If you use the back of the stone as a guide, it would put you out. Do the same with the second stone. Just pare it off gently. As I say, it's a blunt silver knife, it won't scratch opal. Again, heat the wax and roll it up. Just give the stone a little bit of a warm in the face. Heat the wax fairly hot. Place it as centrally as possible again. Pick up the stone, wet your fingers and roll the back up to the face of the opal, as we did with the previous one. Right, as our stone's ready to cut, you can see this point here, where the divot is. Well, our setting edge will have to be in that region there. We'll have to come down to that all the way around the piece. So we'll basically end up right down here near this colour bar. Because of this area here, we don't have a choice. That's where our setting edge will have to finish. We just look at the spinning action again here, using the thumb and first three fingers of the right hand to revolve the stick, the thumb and forefinger of the left hand as a chuck. We get very good control over our spinning action this way. Of course, in and out movement is created by our elbows, and that gives us our cutting pressure. So start the machine and adjust your water flow. And as with all the previous operations, I generally start on the highest point of the back. Get rid of the overburden and get a rough sense of balance before we go to a spinning technique. As we come to that sand, we'll slightly jump over that and not cut it. Not until we get down further with this edge. We're trying to get the edge as square and as straight as possible. We're working at an angle that we need to finish at. You can see those angles a little later. Just wiping it off here, we'll show you what we've done so far. There's our setting edge. It's nice and straight, but it still has to come down further, because it is not yet below this little divot, which is where it has to be. So it all has to come down to that level there, the entire way around the stone. We do that by looking down onto the piece. You can see the little divot created by the sand hole in the back. And as we turn around to this side, we can see it's nice and even and smooth, and there is no dip in the setting edge at all. Now we have to get rid of that so that we do not see it from the face of the stone. Do this by working at the same angle again and bringing the setting edge up very, very slowly, but very accurately. It must be even and straight. Jump over that bit of sand there. Take the high points either side of it. Just bringing it up gently. Now again, working from the top, I'm working at the same angle during this operation that I was during the previous, only now I'm working from above so that I can see what's happening with that little divot. You can actually see when it's gone. So we just jump over it there. Just take the shoulder off now, take that corner off. Start to get a bit of a dome into our back. Just rolling it, taking the high points off before we actually finally spin this. There we go, we spin it from the edge right up to the centre of the back. Creating a nice shallow dome on the back of the stone. Okay. Again, looking from the top, just a final trim here. Get rid of that little divot. We'll show you that shortly. Spinning it back up again. See here the back of the stone, it's fairly rough because it's a fairly new wheel. We probably will lightly sand the back of this stone to get a better finish. Although we do leave them rough finish, we don't polish the backs. See, looking down here now, we can see our little divot. On this side it's nice and smooth. The light runs around as a nice smooth edge. As we get round here, we can still see a little bit of grey. But looking right down the stone, see the light runs around, it was just about gone. As our setting edge, it's fairly high. And the stone on the left has now been sanded lightly. The one on the right has a lot of problems with that sand hole. That's going to be a very difficult stone to cut the back on. Nonetheless, it has to be done, and that sand hole will remain in the back of that stone. As long as it's not visible from the face, it's perfectly okay. Now, as with the other stones, after you've adjusted your water flow here, work on the high point of the back first, getting rid of the overburden. And as usual, when you get to the sand or a sand area, jump over it. There's nothing to cut there, it's a hole. Just bringing it up evenly, working at the angle that you wish to finish at. Jumping over that sand there, trying to get a nice straight edge. Just taking the high points off the back, sort of a slight rocking motion there. Get rid of all the high points first, and then the spinning action will be a lot easier, and it will spin concentrically then. There we go, just a little cross hatching here. Just spin him up from the back, from the very edge to the back, to the centre of the back. Again, we're doing the same thing here, looking down on the stone using the same technique. We can see the little divot in this stone created by the sand hole. We must get rid of that. We don't want it visible from the face of the stone. We're just taking that shoulder off that we left from the last series of cuts. Get it into a rough balance here, and then we'll spin it back up again. Getting a form of balance into the stone now. Here's both the stones now finished. They have both been lightly sanded. The sand hole has remained in the back, as you can see, but it isn't visible from the face, and that's the most important thing. And we're taking them off here, heating between the opal and the wax using our spirit lamp. And again, as I say, I'm using a soft, blunt silver knife. I am not scratching the opal. And I'm not using very much heat. You can see the wax is still very hard. Just pare it off. Don't worry about excess wax on the stones at this point. Just heating between the stone and the wax. Gently paring it off. Careful here not to touch the opal, even though the knife will not scratch it. And we'll just clean these up. I just use a tin lid, a little bit of methylated spirits, or in some countries that'd be wood alcohol. Pour a little bit in the lid, we'll put the two stones in there, and it only takes a few minutes and the wax will dissolve off these stones. Clean and dry them using a clean towel. Of course, we don't want to scratch them at this point. There we are. Now, as is normally done, we'll weigh these two stones shortly using electronic carat scales. Beautiful pair of stones. Lovely green, orange, black opal. There we are. We just weigh the first stone. You'll see here, once the scale settles, it weighs 2.8 carats. Second stone here. Wait for them to settle. 3.7 carats. Quite nice sized commercial stones. Now, for display purposes, we're just putting them in a nice case. Give you a look at those. They're two very high quality green, orange, black opals. Very lovely stones. Now we're going to make a doublet here. Take a little piece of crystal. Now we will need to know if the colour runs right through this piece or not. We'll do this by grinding it around the edges, just to see if there are any problems in the piece. To make a doublet, this needs to be solid colour. At the moment, this piece does have a skin on it on both sides, so the colour's not very apparent at this stage. Just flatten this face off here and have a look at it. Just taking that skin off. You can see a bit of colour popping through here now. You see I revolve it on the wheel so that we don't hollow grind it. And we'll dry the piece, and we'll mark it with a permanent marker as an indicator, so that when we lap the piece, when all the black's gone, you'll know that the piece is absolutely flat. Don't have to do this, but it is a good indicator. Let's mark the entire piece, the side we intend to flatten. Can't see much colour here because of the skin. So we just adjust our water flow on our side lap. It's a 360 diamond lap. I just balance it on my finger, get it a bit wet, and sort of slap it onto the lap, working the whole face of the wheel. When the black's gone, then of course you know the piece is flat. We take a piece of rough opal here. This is a black knobby with an amber skin on it. We have to take a slice out of this to make a backing for our doublet. And I'm going to cut in a fair way on the left-hand side of this piece in order to get a slice out of it that's big enough to put our doublet on. And again here, let the saw do the work, don't push too hard. The saw will cut nicely if you just keep a nice even pressure. There's no rush to slice through the piece. There we are. We have a nice black centre, or black heart, in this piece. We'll take a slice off this now for our actual doublet backing. As I've said before, don't use too much pressure, let the saw do the work. We're cutting this slice off at around 3 to 4 mil thick. You see how this goes. There we are. Oh, we have a nice piece of black potch for our backing. Again, we'll mark this all over the face with a permanent marker before we lap it as our indicator. There we are. Get the machine going. Make sure we have a fair amount of water. It's a fairly big piece. Just balance it on your fingers like I just did there. Slap it onto the lap. It'll flatten fairly quickly on a diamond lap like this. There's our finish off the lap. Those lines in there give quite a good bond. What we do now is we mark it again with a permanent marker, but only where the black is, where we're going to use the piece. We'll do the same with the piece of opal. This is how we make a doublet up. Mix up our 2-part epoxy resin. I'm using a quick set 5-minute here, but as I say in the text, it can take 2 or 3 hours before it's set enough to be cuttable. Mix these as equally as you can. Because we need this black, I'm using a polyester resin dye here, which is very intense black. Just a little bit of that, and mix it thoroughly, all 3 parts. Make sure it's thoroughly mixed, yes. There we go. Now from here, using our spirit lamp again, we'll warm the black area on the piece of potch just to evaporate any moisture, and it will aid in the glue flowing nicely when we put it on there. A dollop of glue in the centre. Yeah, the glue tends to flow a bit better when the potch is warm. We also warm the opal. Not too much, it's a thin slice. Put it in a position where we want it. We bed it down by slightly revolving it to get it down very, very tight. Now here what we're doing is we're going to trim off all the excess potch. That doublet is already set. It's the magic of television. Just trim off the excess potch and stay clear of the opal. Just saves a bit of extra grinding time. All the way around. You can see little bits of glue flipping up here and there as the saw cuts through it. Again, not using very much pressure, letting the saw do the work. From here, we have to orientate this piece now, get it into shape. We'll begin on our course wheel by bringing the potch back into the opal until we have a straight, clean glue line. Yes, grind it in gently. The shape doesn't matter at this point, but the piece must be clean. Just grind it back into the opal. See, we'll have a look at that. See, we have a nice thin glue line between the opal and the potch. We still have a skin on this piece of opal. We have to bring that down so that we can see what problems there are in the actual opal, if there are any. Do this in a rolling motion, slightly doming it. We don't want it dead flat. Just a slight rocking motion there. Now we can see a bit of colour popping out now. Makes a lot of difference on a black backing. See this corner here, we have a fair amount of grey potch in there. That's got to go. All that area. So our stone will be in this region. Just mapping it out roughly here. At this point you do grind out anything that is an imperfection. Adjusting the water flow again, of course. We'll just shape this into its final preform. Now we're doing this at an angle to the wheel, which is the angle we need to finish the setting edge at. These angles are described in the text. It's around 81, 82 degrees on the top. Naturally it's all done by eye, we don't actually measure it. Just bringing it into a nice little oval. So no rush with shaping it. These wheels are very sharp and will cut very quick. Bring it into a nice sort of an oval there. And we'll start bringing the opal into its shallow cabochon, working from the edges to the centre, as we've done with the solid stones previously. Just forming our little cab. And we'll bring the setting edge up at the back. The angles are not too critical at this point. They are very critical when you do the final cutting. Here I'm basically just removing the overburden and getting a sense of balance into the piece. There you go, you can see our rough form setting edge. And to dop this up, we heat the back of the doublet. Not too hot, as I said, it's fragile. Now we heat the wax and roll it up with moistened fingers so that we don't burn ourselves. Use a fair bit of heat here on the stick. Place it on the back of the doublet as centrally as possible, as we've done during the dopping of the solid stones. A little bit easier with doublets though, because we have a glue line as an indicator, so it is easier to see that you're at 90 degrees to the stick and balanced. So that there, using the glue line as the guide. There's our rough preform dopped, ready to final cut. Centred in all directions there. Adjust the water flow here. Again, I work from looking down onto the stone. And again, we do cut these by eye at the angle to the wheel that we want the setting edge to finish up at. As I said before, with the solid stones, you could use a template as a guide if you wish. Although a lot of doublets are calibrated in standard size, more so triplets. Yeah, we're going to go nice little shape there. We'll take the shoulder of the opal off now. Start forming our little shallow cabochon. The same as we did for solid stones. Spinning and cross-hatching to get rid of the spiralling. We don't want it flat or dished in the centre. We want a slow curve over the face. Ideally it should be very high cabochon, but very bright crystal opal like that's very hard to come by. Quite a nice little doublet. I can see in this shot here our setting edge angle for the top, and I've left the opal fairly thick or square edged. Well, that will come out during the sanding and the pumicing stages. Okay, good look at the angles there. Sanding, we follow exactly the same angle as we cut the stone on, starting on the setting edge first and working up over that little shoulder, spinning it back to the centre. Always from the edge to the centre, and cross-hatch to get rid of the spiralling. The more even the finish here and this operation, the easier it'll be on the pumice wheel. Just spinning the little shoulder off, right up into the centre of the doublet. Making sure we sand the entire surface area. Just cross-hatching there to get rid of a bit of that spiralling. important to have your setting edge finished fairly well, even though a lot of it will be cut away when we bring the back up. What is left has to be finished well. With the light running around here, we can see our satin finish that created by the sander. Nice even sort of satin finish all over the piece. And we can see the little square edge on the opal has gone down even further now, and it will disappear almost entirely after we've pumished it. Again, you've washed your hands, the stone and the stick, before we go to this wheel, and make sure that the wheel is very wet. Doublets are a little bit more fragile than solid stones, but they're not as heat tolerant. Starting on the setting edge at the same angle that you've cut and sanded it at, and working our way all the way up over the shoulder to the centre of the stone, making certain that edge is done properly. This is exactly the same as it would be for solid opal, with the exception that with doublets we have to have that setting edge at the right angle. Just cleaning it up there to have a look-see. Checking it as we go. Spinning and gyrating, oscillating it, covering the entire surface area of the opal. There's our pumice finish. I can see now that the square edge that I had left on the opal has just about disappeared. As the light runs around, you can see our pumice finish is quite even, not ripply or bumpy. You wash your hands, the stone and the stick again, of course, before we go to the polishing wheel. Make sure that this wheel is very wet also, and start on the edge of the stone, as we've done all the way through, right up over the shoulder and into the centre of the piece. And try and work evenly on your wheel too, because it gives better wear. All the way from the edge to the centre. Once you get used to this spinning motion, or the action that we use here, it becomes second nature and it becomes very easy. I'll show you that in a minute. Just a little more, make certain. We can under polish, but we can never really over polish. We're looking for a very nice, glassy, lustrous finish on this. Wiping on the hand there. As the light runs around here again, we can see a beautiful finish on that piece. Looks nothing like the piece we originally started with. And our setting edge, nicely polished. Most of that will go as we bring the back up though, of course. Now we've turned it over and we're going to cut the back on this doublet. Again, start on the highest points or the thickest area there. And we must bring this setting edge up now at the angle we want it to finish at, and evenly and as straight as possible all the way around the doublet. In other words, the setting edge line has to be parallel with the glue line all the way around. Just taking the high points off the back, getting a balance into that before we spin it. Cross hatching a bit there. Take the shoulder off. Now with doublets, of course, I work from above at the same angle that we were working at previously. This way we can see when the edge is even all the way around and equal. And there's our finished setting edge. Gives you a fairly good look at the angles. Straight as you can get it. Nice and even. That's our desired finish for the back of a doublet. We take it off the same as we would with solid stones, heat between the opal and the wax. Just gently pare it off. So use an instrument that won't scratch the opal. In this case I can scrape the excess wax off this stone because I'm not actually touching the opal, I'm only touching the wax, flipping it off. Plus, as I said, the knife is silver and very soft. Because we won't soak doublets in methylated spirits, as it will have an effect on the epoxy resin. So to clean this, we'll simply just immerse it in the methylated spirits, and sort of clean it with your thumbs, fingers, and use a towel to finish up with. There it is, roughly cleaned, a nice little doublet. Give it a good wipe now. Lovely piece, apart from the fingerprints, of course. That gives you a good look at our finish all over. That's how a doublet's meant to look when it's finished. Alright, now we'll go on and make a triplet. This is very much like making a doublet. We have a piece of white opal here that has already been blacked on the back. What we'll do here, we'll lap this flat as we did when we made the doublet. We have to go through the same procedures as making a doublet. We'll lap that flat. Make sure that it is flat. There we are. We'll do the same with our piece of potch that we're going to use for a backing. We'll black it all over and lap it flat. It is quite a good indicator. Adjust the water flow. I'll balance this on my 2 fingers. Slap it onto the lap. There you go. It'll flatten fairly quickly. There we are. Now, as with making a doublet, we have to black both the opal and the backing, the potch, using our permanent marker. Here again, I'm only really blacking the area where the material is black itself. If it goes over a little bit, it doesn't matter, because we are going to make an oval out of this piece of opal, because all triplets are basically ovals or rounds. Again, using the 2-part epoxy resin, as we did with a doublet. Mix the 2 parts equally. We'll add a little bit of our polyester resin, our black dye. Not too much. I'll mix that thoroughly. There we go. Make sure it is mixed thoroughly though, or it will affect the setting of the cement. Again, using the spirit lamp, we'll heat the backing piece of potch. Heat the face of it where we're going to put the glue. You'll see the moisture evaporate from the back of this. Put a little dollop of glue where you want to put the piece down. We'll heat the little bit of opal, not excessively though, and place it where we want it to be. Moving it around here and slightly revolving it until it beds down. It's getting rid of air bubbles and actually bedding it down equally all over. Right, now here's a piece of potch that's been sliced straight off the saw. You can see the finish on that. And what we're going to do here is show the old method of flattening opal down for doublets and triplets. We're using a glass plate with 400 carborundum grit on it, and as with the diamond lap, we black the piece of potch. We'll wet this plate down fairly thoroughly. This is quite a good method, very handy if one can't afford a diamond lap. Make sure it's fairly wet. We just work the piece here, picking up the grit and then working in a figure 8 pattern. The figure 8 pattern gives you very good wear on your plate, and it does cut the opal very quickly. You can do it by hand. You don't need an expensive diamond lap. Clean off here and have a look at it. You can can see here, looking at the piece, that still a bit of black remaining. So it's not absolutely flat as yet, so we'll go back to the plate. Still working our figure 8 pattern. It's quite a good method, and it does give a very good bond to your cement. I'll show you the finish on this shortly. You can see why it would bond well. Looking at it closely here, you see as the moisture's evaporating out of the piece. There's our finish. It's a very pitted, sugary looking appearance, and it does give a very good bond. Where this black is here, it is no problem at all, because we're only using the centre area. Now we'll select a triplet cap for our triplet. Let's have a look at one of these. These are pre-cut and finished, manufactured commercially. That side's polished, whereas the back is matte finished, ready to stick down. They are already standard sized, and they're left with this square edge on them, which will eventually be the setting edge when we bring the back up. Very shallow dome, which doesn't make them look glassy. A high dome would. And as with the doublet piece, we'll trim off the excess around the triplet, or what will be our triplet, now that it's set. Just taking these sides off around here. Using our diamond saw, we'll gently, carefully cut these off. As I say, it does save a lot of grinding time and wear and tear on your wheel. Just trim them off. Don't want to go too close to the opal. Diamond saw is a very, very handy tool for anyone to have, provided it's used correctly. There's a bit of glue peeling up there, that's been cut with the saw. That's no problem. Trimmed it back to our rough piece. The next operation here now will be to grind this back into the opal, as we did with the doublet. Then we'll take the face off it and look for flaws. We have checked this beforehand, and there were no flaws, but you never know what can come up once it's blacked. You can get little white spots appearing in this type of opal at times. Just bring it straight in to the opal. The angle we're working at here is not very important, because the cap itself, the triplet cap itself, is going to be the finished top, and the back will be cut straight up to it. Now we've cleaned back to our glue line, fairly well all the way around. Now here we're going to flatten it down, uniformly working around the piece, but we are trying to flatten it this time. We are not trying to get a dome in this. Working evenly around the piece, we're bringing it down fairly flat. Now you can take this down as thin as you dare. But if we go too thin, the opal will crumble on the glue. See here the colour's starting to come up a lot better now that it's getting closer to the black. It's kicking the colour very nicely. So as described before, we'll lap the piece. You could black this if you wanted to, as an indicator. We've got to get this flat, very, very flat. A close look at this, we can see the uniform thickness that we've got. Now that could be thinner if you wished. It's amazing how the colours come up so bright. Here we're trying caps, triplet caps on the piece to see which one will fit. This one here, of course, would waste too much opal. This one here is just a wee bit optimistic. It's overlapping the opal. So we'll go for something about this size in between. Now that'll fit on there fine. Now we are wasting opal by putting this on there. You could stick optical glass onto this and freeform it, but most triplets are calibrated. Unless they're extremely high quality, and then we probably would freeform it We work very cleanly when we're putting a cap on, using a piece of white cardboard here, using the same cement, same epoxy resin, mixed in equal parts. We don't want any dust or anything of that nature getting into this glue because it will be visible under this quartz cap. Mix it thoroughly. And again here we'll heat the piece of opal, the actual doublet, our very thin doublet. Heat the opal side, not too much, just till the moisture evaporates from the back. A dab of glue where we want the cap to go. Now we'll heat the quartz cap. Now this will take a little bit more heat than the opal would. Place it in position, and again we revolve it slightly while we're bedding it down. This gets rid of air bubbles, particularly when it's warmed up like this, and you'd be able to see if there were air bubbles under it, and you can't have that. So you check for that. There's our triplet. Now looking at it up close, now that it's set, we have scraped all the excess glue away from the cap. I use a razor blade for that. And what we'll do here is grind it into the cap, but without touching the quartz cap, because if you touch the cap, you have to reshape the stone to a smaller size and recut the entire thing. And quartz is quite hard to cut. So come in as close as you dare, but don't clip the cap. See, with this type of thing, the stone is basically finished when we do the back. Just bringing it in a little bit at a time, evenly all the way around. Yes, as close to the cap as we can go without touching it. We'll get it all the way in when we cut the back. Of course it won't matter then. Just having a look at that now. Up close here. You can see how close we've gone to the cap and not touched it. So I haven't paid particular attention here to any form of angles, because we'll set that up when we cut the back properly after we've dopped the stone up here. You can see that the square edge on the quartz cap is wavy. They're mass produced, and this is what we're up against. So our setting edge will not be very straight when we get it there, but as long as the stone is in round when we're finished, we're okay. Now cutting the setting edge or the back on a triplet, we're working at a much steeper angle than we would with any other stone, probably around 40-45 degrees. We'll bring that setting edge right up to the quartz, which in the end will put the opal and the backing completely underneath the quartz cap. Bringing it up slowly and evenly. We take the back down fairly thin on triplets because they have a fair amount of stability with the quartz cap. Because a lot of them are glued into settings and souvenirs too, we don't want very deep backs on them. Again, working from above at the same angle we did the previous cuts at. We're bringing it up now till we're getting rid of that bit of opal that we've left all the way around. We will clip the quartz cap now, but it doesn't matter if it's clipped from underneath. That's what we have to do. So that all we'll see when it's finished is just the quartz cap showing only opal colour. Just trimming it up slowly, a bit at a time as we go. There's no rush to get it up onto that quartz. Very gentle and even with it. You don't really get a second chance of this if you go up too high. Yes, just gently. Just take the little shoulder off, and there's the back on our triplet cut. Our day's work here, or our work for the film, a doublet on the left, 2 gem black opals in the centre, and our triplet on the right hand side. Beautiful stones.
Opal Street, Lightning Ridge. Invariably, this is where some of the black opal starts its journey into the world market. After lots of hard work by the miner and the opal cutter, these gems are now ready for sale. And now we invite you to discover the magic of opal. This is the home of black opal, and these are the colours of Lightning Ridge.